Hi there, I'm Jason Ball, and this is Life After News. This episode is a step-by-step playbook for making a bold career move without losing yourself or your paycheck. CBS New York reporter Aundrea Cline-Thomas spent years preparing for her Life After News, and now she's sharing how she did it. It was about two things: finding the next best thing for you, not the next best thing, but the next best thing, and rewriting your story. Aundrea Cline-Thomas, thank you for joining us today. You started your career in Macon, Georgia, and like so many of us in our business, started in a small market and worked your way up. You worked in Nashville, Charlotte, Philadelphia, and then ultimately New York.
Yes.
Was New York the goal?
No, I'm from the DC area. So actually WRC was the goal. That's, the legacy station that I grew up watching. So that was always the goal.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
But New York is a good goal too.
Yeah, I mean, it just actually, I came to New York. Yeah, it was just actually very different. I went to Philly because of its proximity to DC. I really wanted to get closer to home. But by that point, coming to New York wasn't like the goal or, I don't know, even feeling like I had made it. It was just never a part of the plan. I went to New York to have more exposure, actually. I was like, it's the center of the communications universe. And so I figured that I would have a lot more exposure to a lot of other things, because at that point I was really thinking about what my next would be.
Okay, so I'll actually start with on a couple of podcasts ago, one of my guests said that she believes there's a finite amount of news that anyone can do, and that's different for everybody. And some people can do it forever, and some people can do it for 10 years, 5 years, 30 years, whatever. So you decided even before you got to New York that this wasn't for you for long term. Is that what I'm understanding?
Yeah, I mean, I just saw what was happening in the industry, and I was very realistic about it. The news habits had changed, and I didn't feel like the industry was responding with the urgency necessary to meet the moment. And so I never am one who wants to be caught off guard or flat-footed. And I said, if this wasn't going to be my forever, where could I position myself where opportunity could come with my skill set? And it was between going home to DC and making it feel like a warm hug, or coming to New York and having exposure to things that I had never had exposure to. So while I was working in New York, I was secretly going to a lot of different events and asking people what they did and what it looked like, and just being exposed to storytelling on different platforms, which is what I was ultimately just so interested in.
So before you left WCBS, you worked for a couple of years to figure out what you wanted to do and how to execute that plan?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had from Nashville, which was my favorite job. I say I started planning my next in a job that I loved with people that I loved in a city that I absolutely loved. But because I saw that the industry was changing. And, I was asking myself, do I want to be covering snow at a certain age? Do I want to be on the side of the road? And the answer was no. But, I also maybe I'll try, maybe I want to do network. But then it came to the point where when I came to New York and that started becoming part of the conversation, I was like, I don't want to live out of a suitcase. I don't want that lifestyle. It's not actually very glamorous. The rose-colored glasses are very much off. I don't want that life. So yeah, slowly started to plan. It wasn't concerted, but I just was like, I might come to a point where what I want and what the industry can provide might be at odds. And if I come to that crossroads, what would happen? And
then you came to that crossroads in 2022 when you founded Mountain Court Media. Tell us what that is and how you made that transition.
Okay, so what it is now is not what I intended it to be. Okay,
that's interesting.
So I mean, I think that's the thing, is that people think that they need to have all the dots connecting and everything all figured out, but that's not what the case was. When I was planning to leave, and it was years long decision making where I just gave myself agency to ask myself what I wanted and what I needed, and always positioning myself for growth. And I was in a place that was not growing anymore. And I never want to be, that's how you get stuck, is when you're in places that don't grow. And so how else could I use my skills? And I was like, well, I really love storytelling. I want to do it forever. But I also want to storytell on a lot of different platforms. And if you asked me in 2022, I said, I'm going to find ways to tell stories and then figure out the platforms where those stories can live, understanding that people were consuming media in so many different ways. And I was just so hungry to get to know all of these different platforms. Well, I thought that was like long form specials, things of that nature. And I was having some meetings, and those doors just never opened. The door that immediately opened was live events with journalism. So with The Atlantic, there was a live event that they have a festival, and I produced festival sessions and stuff like that. That felt like very much like the newsroom. The next thing that happened was I knew somebody who was bringing the Griot. So Byron Allen had bought the Black News Channel, and he owned the Griot. So he was bringing the Griot, which was a website, to TV. And she asked me to come on to be part of the team to launch the TV arm. The other thing that happened was a friend had a business, and wanted to connect better with her audience, kind of like a gamified financial kind of product. And she called it business development. I had no idea what business development was. And I said yes. So really the first year I just said yes to everything that kind of came my way, and parsed out what I really liked, what I didn't like, and have honed things down. So now Mountain Court Media is a strategic storytelling agency where I like to say we help our clients tell more authentic and impactful stories about themselves, their work, and each other. How that looks right now is a corporate media training, producing creative projects, and producing live events. And so that's what I do on that side of the business.
That live events is an interesting notion, because it's kind of like producing TV, except the audience is not behind the camera. They're actually in the room. How is that?
I love it. I love it so much because it's an instant dopamine hit. So, so many people think, with TV that you're getting the feedback. It's like, no, I'm speaking into a camera, with very few people around, if the people even in the studio are paying attention to what we're saying, right? But to work on a project, to have time where you're having 30-minute conversations so you can get into the weeds, you can get into the nuance, you can get into the depth. That's amazing. Bringing people who don't always get a platform, bringing them as guests to add color and context to the conversations. I'm a sucker for conversations. That's amazing. And then when you're working on something for so long, and kind of like those punchlines, like the questions that will get the response, and then the audience response, the oohs, the ahs, the clapping, like then it's just like, yes, it landed. Like you get the instant feedback, the head nods. So I remember standing in the back of the room, maybe it was last year, and I was like, man, I was really worried that what I produced, nobody would care about when I left. Like, would anybody care about what I care about? Could I tell stories in a way that people cared about? And the room was packed, and it was packed with people of all ages and all races and all socioeconomic statuses. And, it was a criminal justice panel, which I'm like really passionate about. And I was like, I used to fear that I wouldn't be relevant in this way. And I am, in fact, moving the needle. And so it was so gratifying, and I was just so proud of myself.
That's amazing. I mean, I love this format because it is in-depth conversations, but having that instant feedback would be amazing. Maybe we should figure out a way to do live podcasts.
Yes. Stream it on YouTube, and then you get the chat section. Absolutely.
That's cool. That's a great idea. So one of the things you said too is you asked yourself what you wanted, and then I listened to an interview where you said when the first time you asked yourself, you didn't know the answer
at all.
And I think that's a lot of us. We know we need something different, but we don't know what we want because we've been trained to want this. We want the next job, the next promotion, the next market, and then when you really sit back and think about it, like what advice would you give to someone, like, if you don't know what you want, how do you figure it out? How do you find it?
I did a lot of different things, right? A lot of people ask themselves in terms of a title, and you got to remove that weight from you and just say, what am I really good at? What do people always ask my advice about? What do they come to me for? I've emailed friends to say, when you think about me, what are some adjectives that come to mind? I got advice where they said, map out your ideal day. And so I did that. And you have to be like serious when you're doing these things. And so my ideal day had me waking up and working out and working on multiple projects throughout the day and going to business meetings and going to networking events. And then I looked at it and I was like, this is nice. That was a cute exercise. There's no way this is happening within the framework of local news. And so I kind of shut it, closed my little journal. And then it was last year that I was reminded of like, oh my gosh, your days now are exactly, minus the working out in the morning. I'm still working on that.
You divined it.
Right. I'm working on it. But my days are exactly how I imagined the best day being.
That's amazing, because
Yeah.
when you write it out and then you kind of forget about it, but then 2 or 3 years later, you're rediscovering like, I'm actually doing that.
I'm actually doing it. Because I think there's something, it's not even just like the woo-woo manifestation. I think there is something when you start defining what it is that you need, because journalism, the whole idea that you are never the story and you are frowned upon if you are ever a part of the story. Now things are changing, right? Because there's personality that we understand the audiences really care about. But me, as I was coming up, they're like, change your hair. This is what you wear. This is the cadence of your voice. This is how your voice tone needs to be to resonate. Your nails, like everything was just so prescribed. And you're making small concessions over time, but they accumulate. So it came to a point where I became unrecognizable to my own self because I was I was saying, this is what I can do, not is this what I want to do? And those are very different questions. We are multi-talented as journalists, so we can do a lot of things, but that doesn't mean that's what we want to do. And when I started asking myself, what do I really want to do? I also started paying attention to my body, because my mind, I could, think myself out of a lot of things, but when my body would light up or have the reverse, reaction, I started noticing when that was happening, what was happening, and who I was with. So I could figure out what was warm, what felt good, and started trying to draw the dots between
And
that.
lean into that.
Yeah.
So then you kind of morphed again or evolved a little more, and then you decided to do the next best thing podcast, which is the next best thing, not the next best thing.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
So tell us what that is and how that came about.
Well, so the next best thing was really all about keeping a promise to myself. And again, wanting a space where I could tell stories that didn't have to go through a filter, didn't have to go through other people's expectations, didn't have to go through an editorial process that didn't understand my lived experience or didn't fully value my lived experience. So it wasn't anything super strategic. It was just, you have a voice and you want to tell stories. And I have always been obsessed with conversation, as I said earlier, but also success and growth and grappling with the question of being Black in non-Black spaces and being in systems, of always feeling like I'm hitting my head against a ceiling so many times. How do you circumvent that? How do you still remain successful when you're navigating systems that were created without you in mind? And so as I was navigating a transition, I don't do anything alone. And so I was like, let me talk to other people who have already done this, who are 10 steps ahead of me. I mean, on the most basic level, I needed some advice to figure this out. And that's how it started. I didn't care if only myself and my mother listened to it. It wasn't about that. It was really about me finding my voice. And that's exactly what happened. Me exercising my voice in a different way, just having the conversations that I cared about. And also, I was really afraid that, okay, I had this grand idea of maybe what could possibly happen, but if I ended up in a cubicle in a job that was boring, What is it about journalism that I'm just not willing to give up? I'm willing to give up a lot of things, but what am I not willing to give up? And it was the interview. That was something I was just not willing to give up. And so I was like, well, I don't need a company to do that. I can do that on my own. And so that was just like my little space of joy that I wanted to create for myself, but it blossomed into something so much bigger.
I think what you said is true. I think the fear so many of us have about leaving is leaving that energy, the collaboration, the conversation, and working in a cubicle all day by yourself and not talking to anybody. That would, for most of us, that would just be, I mean, that's hell.
Yes.
Literally.
Torture, just like not hearing different opinions, not meeting people and hearing how they made it out of a tough situation. And that's the thing is too, when I was seeking, I would watch shows, I would listen to podcasts, I was reading books to try to figure out how to navigate this feeling that I had. I didn't have the language for it. I didn't have the data to like figure out what I should specifically be doing. I didn't really find things that spoke directly to me. I could take a little nugget here and a little nugget there, but in terms of speaking to my direct experience, I didn't really find many conversations that could do that. And so I wanted to have a more nuanced conversation that better reflected what I was experiencing. And journalism taught me if I'm experiencing it, a lot of other people are experiencing it as well. And have it, a lot of people get what they want and then they're like, and then we lived happily ever after. I was like, no. I want to understand when you didn't know what the outcome would be, how were you taking calculated risks? What were you thinking about? Things of that nature. Like, what was the first step you took? Things like that. I wanted to break down that ambiguous, messy middle part and really break that down. And it has changed my life, honestly. It really has changed my life.
In what ways?
From the advice, it's allowed me not to have the same pitfalls that a lot of other people do, especially as it pertains to being a new business and making money. I make money. I've replaced my income. If you look at the statistics on women-owned businesses, there are a lot of them created, but a lot of women don't make money. And I have. And so that's because of the advice that I've received of don't do this, do this. I just do it. I'm not trying to like reinvent a wheel and, trying to come up with something for myself. I'm just like, oh, it worked for them. Let me try it for me. It's just like kind of that simple. But what it also did in the sharing of the clips is that it rebranded me in a way that I didn't even know that I needed. I didn't think of myself as having a brand. And again, that's the way that you're taught in journalism, is to not to ever really think about yourself. But we all have a story being written about us. And the question is, do you want to participate in that narrative or not? Because the narrative is going to happen regardless. And so sharing those clips, if you had Googled me, you're going to see that I'm covering murders. You're going to see that I'm covering Rikers. And that's not necessarily what I want to be known for professionally, because that unless you want to go into like the criminal justice space or whatever, which I didn't really, I thought I might, but I really didn't want to, that doesn't actually serve me, right? And so, and if you want more opportunities, people need to be able to see you in their space. And so having these conversations and sharing the clips gave me more breadth and depth so people could see me differently. And so when people meet me now, or they're like, oh, I've watched your clips on LinkedIn, or oh, I've seen, what you're doing there. And so I'm known in a much different way. And I didn't even know that was happening. That wasn't like the goal when I was sharing. I was just like, hey, when I listened to my podcast, I had a cool interview. But that's what it did. And so it opened up business opportunities as a result.
That's great. That's really great advice too, to kind of put yourself out there. But congratulations on monetizing your business and making it work, because you're right. A lot of people open businesses and a lot of people close businesses. And the fact that you stayed at it and took good advice and would you say you were cautious, or you were just kind of knew what you were doing, where you were going?
No, I didn't know anything of what I was doing. No way. I had no idea. No idea. No clue. No idea. I think it's, I didn't come at it from a scarcity mindset. I gave myself 2 years, which felt like a contract, right? I was like, I'm going to throw the kitchen sink at it. I cannot quit. I cannot complain. Like, I have to just keep going for 2 years. And After 2 years, then I could reassess if this is the right thing for me. If not, then I'll get a job. No big deal. At least I tried it. I got it out of my system.
I've
You
heard a
know,
couple other people say that setting timelines and setting goals, don't be unrealistic. You're not going to do this in 4 months or 6 months. It
right.
takes time.
It takes a lot of time and it's so much work. Like in terms of entrepreneurship, I always tell people, like, if you can find a job that you love, do that. It's just a lot easier. Like, actually just do that. But the thing was that there was nothing, I didn't find anything that I loved. And the things that I was applying for, I didn't get. And so I wasn't just going to sit around and submit, countless resumes. I was just going to make it happen for myself. And that's how I felt like in journalism. I just felt like I was always just like having to prove my worth. They said, I felt like the goal line kept moving as to like, oh, you do this well. I was like a Swiss Army knife. I could do everything, right? But I was never compensated for it. And so the goal line just kept moving. And so I was like, I'm just tired of putting my future, my financial future, especially in somebody else's hands. It is just time for me to take the reins. I'm smart enough. I live in New York City. I have done the work. I have expanded my network. I've been helpful to people. I have 2 degrees. Like, all of this stuff has to count for something. And if it doesn't count for anything, then that's my problem, right? Like, it has to count for something. I don't know what it counts for, but I got to figure that out. And every day in journalism, you have to figure stuff out quickly. And so I just leaned into literally all the steps we take to tell stories every day. I deconstructed it, literally just deconstructed it and applied it to myself.
Right. So the Swiss Army knife, that's a great analogy because it's true. We're
Yeah.
multifaceted, multi-talented. We can figure anything out. And that's what led to the rewrite, right?
Yes.
So tell us what the rewrite is.
Yes, the Rewrite. The Rewrite is a community of journalists and storytellers who are invested in reassessing, reimagining, and reinventing their careers in the face of the instability. And the Rewrite came because I was going through this transition and talking to all these people. And even though I had a lot of help, I mean, every dollar I've made has come from a friend. And it's been almost 3 years now.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, no, it's great. It's much better, actually.
Help each other.
Yeah, help each other out. And so I was just like, wow, I am learning so much. I'm in these meetings. They're meetings that they're blowing my mind constantly. I'm drinking from a fire hose every day and just taking in all of this information. I thought, I'm in New York City. I'm in the streets. I'm interviewing all the people from the penthouses to the politicians to, everyday folks. I am exposed. Absolutely not. I was not exposed. Another misnomer was, oh, people know what I do. People have no clue what you do. People have no clue what you bring to the table. I liken it to being in the military. We say thank you for your service, but do we know what a soldier does? Do we know what a staff sergeant even means? What does that even mean? We have no idea. Same thing for journalists. Nobody actually knows what you do, even if they consume the product that you put out every single day. It's not saying like, oh, this is an accountant. And so then we assume they're great with numbers. They're, project management. They're organized. Like, there's no natural associations to what journalist skills are and how that can be applied elsewhere. And so I was doing all right because I had friends who were running interference for me. And at the same time, I'm seeing all of these layoffs happening. And I know I did things while I was in that none of my friends were doing. And I was like, wow, what's happening to all these people who are now in a job market? Because it's not like the Great Recession, 2007, 2008, where those jobs eventually came back. These jobs are not coming back in that same number. So mathematically, this is not a emotional conversation. Mathematically, most people are going to have to transition to something else that they have not done before. How are they going to do that when they have completely different language? They have completely different protocol. They're using technology, which journalists don't really use technology. I mean, APEMPS, that's iNews. We've been using that forever, right? Just the newest version, but we're not like exposed to the new technology that's happening at the scale that is happening in other companies. What if I could make people, like I can make the people who are teaching me available to others to help them with any transition, specifically those who are in it right now, to say, hey, I hope you stay in forever. But if you don't, the time to prepare is not after, is not when you don't have any options. The time to prepare is now, because that's why I'm in my position, is because I prepared years before I needed it. And so that's how it started. And so we just put it on Instagram. Hey, had a little website to collect emails if you're interested. And I just send out emails of just like advice that I've gotten. And then we would take the surveys. And from that, we were starting to create, have webinars. From webinars, we created a course, literally took all the surveys, which was more than 100 surveys, and everybody was asking pretty much the same questions. And so we found people to be answers to those specific questions that everybody had, and then provided that. And now it's a community, because that's just more cost effective, where I've launched the Next Best Thing community. So it's pairing the podcast and the rewrite for journalists. And so you have access to people who are in a lot of different industries, because that's a problem journalists have, is that you don't really know others who are not in the industry. So it's for people across industries. And so we have webinars and workshops, really, not just webinars, because it's not passive, it's very active. Mm-hmm. And then every week I send out, okay, I really need you to work on this week. I need you to work on that. There's there's an accountability measurement. And then there's also a sharing of resources. So if somebody needs this, like just today, they were like, someone's starting a business. And I was like, link them with my attorney that helped me start my business, so then they can get their LLC set up. So all of that is happening in the community. But outside of the community is paid. But outside of that, there's tons of free resources. Right.
So there's kind of multiple tiers. There's some free things you can go in and kind of look and get it. Yeah. I feel like you get a taste of it. And then there's a paid tier too. But even the transferable skills guide, which is free, I downloaded it and read through it. I thought it was fascinating that there's a list of jobs that journalists can do.
Yes.
That just you don't even necessarily think about, which cuts through so much right there. And then the other thing I thought was really fascinating was here's how you should describe what you do, instead of saying, get rid of all the TV lingo that we use. And I just pulled a few of them. I just want to, data-driven integration marketing campaigns. We can understand that. Understand the dynamics of short-form storytelling. Create award-winning shareable videos. Deep understanding of digital landscape, engaging with key audiences. Those are all things that we do. We just don't know how to put them in those words.
Yes. And that was one of the things, is that I was sitting in meetings and they had all this corporate speak, and I literally would just, slowly write things down in my notebook, because I'm like, I've never heard anyone say these things. And I was like, there's a whole other language happening, and I was blown away by it. And I would write things down in my notebook. So that's how the Transferable Skills Guide was born, is that I consolidated a ton of job postings that journalists could do. Because every Saturday I send out an email called The Rundown. It has tons of jobs in it. And so I go through it. It's like I do it manually. And so I kept on seeing similar lingo. And I was like, and I kept it in my notes app and I literally, all of this stuff is manual that's done, right? Of just, how can we describe ourselves? So another issue that folks have, because the number one question people had was, how can my skills transfer? That's our number one question, which is why the Transferable Skills Guide was created. Also, a lot of people start talking to me, well, I want to do this, or I don't want to do PR because I don't want to send press releases. And I was like, the person who's sending press releases and PR and the totem pole is probably very low on the totem pole. PR is very expansive. You have to understand business. You have to understand marketing. You have to understand audiences. There's so much more strategy and PR than you're giving people credit for, because you're only dealing with PR in a very small fraction of people's roles, or people who are in the more junior roles and not people who are in the more senior roles. So you get a lot of that. And I'm like, you're saying what you think you want and don't in terms of job titles, but you don't actually know what it means. And then also to see the expansiveness of how your skills transfer more broadly in the world in a way that's authentic and not salesy. That's another issue that folks are like, I don't want to just sell something. Like, I want it to have meaning. And one of my really dear friends who has been like on this journey with me for years, she goes, Aundrea, you don't have to like aspire to be Oprah. You can aspire to be the person Oprah interviews. And the whole idea is that they're important too. They're doing really important work too. So it doesn't have to just look one way.
That's amazing. So if someone's starting down this journey, what are the first things they're encountering after learning that their skills are transferable and then learning how to relate those? What are the next things they have to encounter and deal with and manage to move to the next level?
Yeah, first, you just have to get clarity. Oftentimes people are just like, I just need to update my resume. And I'm like, to go where? You don't even know where you want to go. And also being multifaceted people, we have a lot of skills. You need to optimize for your top skills. You don't have to, saying I could just do everything means nothing. That means that you can't do anything to other people. So you have to be really clear about what worked, what didn't work, what environment can you thrive in. Newsrooms are pretty standard environments, pretty standard. But outside that, like, you have wildly different work environments. You have to be very clear about how do you thrive? How do you like to be managed? Do you need flexibility? Which I didn't fully realize until I took an assessment and it put it into words for me. And I'm like, I know why this job wasn't great for me. And I know why this job was wonderful for me, was just that dynamic. So I have a whole framework. It's called Empower. So we can't go through all of it, but the first one is Envision. So it's really just getting clear. There are a lot of roads. You want to recalibrate your GPS to what road you want to go down. The M is money. So we have to be very clear about, we have to fund our dreams. And so the reason why I was able to take a bigger risk is because I had money saved. Period. And so, let's just not be airy-fairy about this. We're grown-ups. I live in New York City. My rent is people's mortgages, right? Like, it's ridiculous. And so you have to save money because money buys you time. And a LinkedIn report showed that it's taking the average job seeker at least 6 months to find a new job, which means that if you don't have between your severance or your savings at least 6 months saved, then you need to pull multiple levers at the same time. Your money, your runway determines the urgency, right?
100%. And so I tell people all the time, save your money. Save your money. Start early, save your money. Because if you don't,
early. Especially now where people are literally coming to work and they're like, oh, by the way, not only like our whole outlet is shutting down. You know what I mean? That's just real life that's happening for people. And so, you can say sometimes we become like justice warriors in journalism, but it shouldn't be like this and da-da-da-da. Okay, right. But it is. Now what? You know what I'm saying? Like, literally, now what? And so if you don't have enough runway and you are looking, that means that you have to monetize your expertise right now while also looking for a full-time job. They both have to happen simultaneously, or else you're going to get into scarcity and take whatever, and you're going to be miserable, right? And so money buys time. Full stop. And have a clear budget on how much you spend, not your oodles and noodles budget like you were 21 years old, your real life grown up budget. How much can you save? Is there anything unnecessary that you can cut? I believe in living a nice life, but having that. And also, so if it's going to take some time, you got to figure out how to monetize your expertise right now. And that doesn't mean necessarily like working retail or Uber. Those are fine if that's what you want to do. But you have skills that people need. And that's what we teach folks, is how to monetize their expertise in terms of like consulting and freelancing and things like that. That's still like corporate work that can give you thousands of dollars and not a few $100s at a time. I think those are the first two. I'll say the third one actually really quickly because it's really important, is your personal brand. No one knows who you are if you don't tell them who you are. And I think that working in a public space, even if you're behind the scenes, working in a big name kind of gives you a false sense of security. No one can help you if they don't know who you are, if they don't know what you can do, and if they don't know what you need. And if you're not sharing that, if you're not saying that on a consistent basis, and one time's not enough, if you're not sharing it, then you can't become a magnet to opportunities. You will always be the person chasing.
And I think people don't even realize what their brand is or who they are, because it's not always what you think it is either.
That's true. And a lot of people I see, they're not on LinkedIn, which is a huge mistake. Big old eggs for their pictures. And then they're like, oh, I should care now, and let me just set something up. And they don't say anything about themselves. It's just like a lot of words. It doesn't say anything. Nobody knows what you're talking about. And they're not getting in on, or if they are, they're saying, you know, I covered the Trump trial today, and this is what happened. And I was like, we know. And people aren't going to LinkedIn to figure out the latest on the Trump trial. But do you have a specific expertise that you can share with us? You know, if you did a story and you had a specific character, you know, I did a one-on-one with somebody, and I said, what do you want to be known for? And they're like, man, I really would love to do something that has like a health and wellness spin to it, because I really love that. And I was like, great. Would anybody know that you care about health and wellness if they looked on any of your social media, if they Googled you? No, because they're just going to see the last fire, the last shooting, and look, you got to do whatever you got to do. But like, how about instead of covering the actual shooting, like sharing it, like, right, hey, I covered the shooting and 5 people are dead and 2 are in the hospital, right? Like giving the summary, the synopsis of the story. How about you frame it in a way of, you know, covering crime is a part of my job, but to decompress, these are my mental health practices as a result. Why don't you frame it where you still did the story because you have to get paid, right? But now you're framing it because you want to be known for more of health and wellness versus kind of what you do day to day. So it's just really important.
So that's what you guys do with the kind of intake. You interview people and you come up with a document that summarizes their personalities, their interests, their skills, and their values.
Yes. So when I do one-on-ones for folks, and especially now it's like really in the community, and I use this framework and I'm asking them a ton of questions, and then I relay it back to them. And everybody I've done it with, they're like, oh, I can do it, because it just seems like a big audacious thing. And they're like, oh, I can figure out what next step to take. Because all you have to do really, and I don't want to trivialize it, because it is a lot of hard work, but I always say on the podcast, it's about how to get from where you are to where you want to be. So we're here to help be that bridge. And so it's just identifying where are you and identifying where you want to go and what's the path to bridge that gap. So you might not make a leap. Most of us don't, you know, but what's this next best thing is why I called it that, because it's not, especially now, I think I had a friend who was talking about, well, I don't know, you know, if I don't do this, then, you know, I might do something else. And, you know, I don't know if I could stay there for long. And I was like, no one should be thinking about staying anywhere for long. What can you do for 1 year? What can you do for 2 years? I wouldn't think about anything beyond 2 years, because it's just changing so fast. What's your next best thing? And then when you do that, then what's your next best thing? If your life changes, if you're partnered, if you have children, your needs change. And then you get your next best thing. And so it's all about, you know, living the life that fits your life, as opposed to working and then trying to like fold yourself into a pretzel to try to make it fit.
That's really good advice. That is really good advice to figure out what you want your life to be like. I think that's what I've been trying to do have been doing for the last 4 years. How is your life different now than it was when you were at WCBS?
Oh my God. It's unrecognizable. I'm coming up on 3 years. And it is, I was just thinking about this. It is absolutely unrecognizable. First of all, I work harder than I have ever worked ever. But I have so much joy. I have so much joy because I'm working on things that are really meaningful to me. I love learning. I just love learning. I'm a complete geek, and I do that every single day.
Me too.
About the most nuanced, crazy things. So I've learned so much being able to, and again, I don't think entrepreneurship is for everyone. I don't think it's for most people, but in pursuit of this, being able to make money just from my idea, like literally I had an idea and then I just went and pounded the pavement to make it happen, is the most empowering thing I have ever experienced. So now my question last year was, which was my first full year in entrepreneurship because I had a bridge job with the Griot. And last year my question was, oh my God, can I do this? Can I pay my bills just based on this work? And I did it. I replaced my income from news. And now it's, all right, what numbers do you want to hit? So I literally come up with numbers and I'm like, all right, how can you figure this out? And to have that agency, I'm not special. I'm not special. I have no special powers. I'm a first generation American. Like, I'm not special.
You are special, but
No, but I just have the courage and the confidence to believe in myself and to believe that nothing is wasted. So I think being a journalist made me so much better as an entrepreneur. And I use my journalism skills every single day. So yeah, and the biggest thing is that I get to see my family, which was the crux of all of this in terms of living the life that you want. Is I just came from home. I literally am in Maryland probably 1 week out of the month now. My parents are doing great and stuff like that, but I don't miss moments anymore.
oh,
I don't miss anything
you
anymore.
don't miss working on Christmas?
I know. I don't ruin Christmas. I would ruin Christmas where they'd be like, because we go on vacation for Christmas and they're like, Aundrea, can we go on vacation this year? And I'm like, I'm waiting to hear back if I could, or make Christmas shorter. So yeah, no. So I don't miss any family moments.
Great. That for me too. Okay, can we talk about one last thing before we go? Can we talk about Cowboy Carter? Because I just listened to your podcast to Carter.
Ever.
The best ever. Oh my God.
Oh my God. It was so great.
I was at the opening night in LA. First night, and I literally decided to go like 2 days. I really wanted to go because I'm a huge fan of the album. It's one of my favorite albums.
Yes.
I love it from beginning to end. I listen to it over and over and over again.
Yes.
And I literally decided 2 days before, I'm like, I'm going. Randomly, I got a seat next to my friend. So it was even more fun. So it was an amazing. But tell us about your experience.
Oh my gosh. So I had never seen Beyonce in concert.
I had neither.
Yes. I was just like, I'm not part of the Beehive. Like, I thought folks were extra, like, oh, you got it. And I tried to my friend got tickets. And I was like, oh, I had all the screens open to try to get the tickets and the fight to all of that. I was like, oh, this is so much. But she just vibrates on such a different frequency, and her excellence and just the fact that she lives on her own terms. I've always been fascinated by it. So I was in awe most of the time where I'm singing a lot, but sometimes I just stop and I'm like, this is what I am seeing is crazy.
I love what you said too. Like, I can't imagine her dreams. What are her dreams like?
What are her dreams like? How do you think this up? Because every corner, there's something always happening. Every dancer is intentional. They're dancing on 100. No one is slacking. All the things are happening. The video's running at the right time. It's all of the things, the colors, it all means something. It all means something. And so it's really indicative of how I want to live my life in terms of being very clear about what my offering is, not being swayed by what an industry standard is, and saying, no, this is how I show up. This is what I have to offer. And also being locked in with your tribe and your audience and being inclusive enough in a time when everybody is in scarcity to say, no, there's so much to go around, right? There's place for everybody. That was also the most beautiful thing of just seeing everybody from everywhere showing up in their whole demonstration of themselves. It was because we took the train, from the train station. It just was wild to me.
It was amazing. The way it made it an event. Everyone was dressed in their boots and their hats and everyone looked different. And the American flag was everywhere. I thought that was really, really profound. And to me, the album is such an exploration of not just country music in general, but country music in very broad spectrums. There's a lot
Yeah.
of Western stuff. There's a lot of
Yes.
Texas rodeo. It was, I love the album so much. I really do. I listen to it over and over again because there's every time I feel like I get something new out of it too.
Yeah, and when I went to Nashville, that's when I was first like fully introducing into country music. Before I'd be like, no, I don't listen to that. And then there was just like parts of it when I was in Nashville. I'm like, oh, this is like, I love the soul of it. And I love, I just was exposed to it in like different ways. And so she melded all of the things that I loved. And then also all of the things that I felt like was distant, all into one. I was like, this is genius.
I actually thought I might go to Vegas.
Yeah, that's where I'm like, talking to my friend. It's so financially irresponsible for me. I'm just trying to bridge that. Yeah, to go to Vegas. I really should not, but I'm literally like,
well, let me know if you go, and maybe we can have a drink.
Yeah, no, that would be so great. That would be so great.
All right, Aundrea, I appreciate the time today and the wisdom that you're passing on. I'm so interested to know more about and how you're literally helping people make that transition, and it's remarkable work that you're doing. I'm
Thank
amazed.
you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And if I could just say one last thing is that sometimes people feel away because they're like, oh, she's telling me to leave my job. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm just saying that you came into this because you loved it and you deserve to continue to have a career from that same passion of service. And one person shouldn't hold the keys to your future. And so that's why I'm just helping people create more options in their life. And so if you're interested, you can go to startyourrewrite.com and to find out more information.
That's what I say too. We're not anti-journalism. We're here for it. We support and value it. It's more important than ever. But sometimes you got to move on. And when you're ready, we're here.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Thank you so much for having me.
It was so nice talking about Cowboy Carter with another fan. I've been looking for an opportunity. I'm glad Aundrea gave it to me. If you want to know more about the rewrite, the website is called startyourrewrite.com. You can sign up for Aundrea's newsletter and download the transferable skills guide. They're both free. You gotta check it out. The link will be in the bio. Also, if you want to hear her podcast, it's called The Next Best Thing. The YouTube link will be on there, or you can find it wherever you find podcasts. The link will be in the show notes. Coming up on the next episode of Life After News, Los Angeles reporter anchor Christina Pascucci left the news about a year and a half ago, and since then she's run for the U.S. Senate. She had a baby. She went to Yemen. She joined the California State Guard, and now she's expecting her second child. So you hear all about her amazing story and what she's doing and what she's passionate about now. If you haven't already, please subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. Leave us reviews. Also, subscribe to our YouTube page for the video versions of this. You can follow me on Instagram at Mr. Jason Ball or at Life After News Pod. LinkedIn's another place to catch up with me. I love to have conversations about careers and career pivots in journalism. We have new episodes every Tuesday. If you like it, share it, give us good reviews. Thank you so much.